Hello, everyone. Welcome. 60 years in the future, 1963. Right? Got the math right? Y'all didn't hire me for my math skills. That's what I say at work all the time. Like, I'm really good at a lot of things. Math is not one of them. So here we are in 1963, and the one and only major news story we're just going to get right out there was the assassination of President JFK in Dallas, Texas. Also, if you've not been to the Book Depository Museum in Dallas, Texas, it's one of the best museums I've ever been to. So just a little plug for the Book Depository Museum. You actually stand in the window where Lee Harvey Oswald stood and shot JFK. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I think we'll get into this later on in this episode, but I think that the early 60s, in a lot of ways, is when America kind of lost its innocence.
Sure.
Not that there wasn't a whole lot of shit going on in the 50s. You just didn't talk about it, right? I mean, but in the 60s, we started to actually talk about things that we were, and part of it was, the death of Camelot. I mean, I think that had a big effect on the American psyche.
I think a lot of people who lived through that, for sure, were definitely affected. It was the first assassination in, 60 years, which doesn't seem that long now, though, when I say it out loud. But I guess William McKinley was probably the last assassination, which was 1900 or something like that. Oh, I'm going to show my history nerd, William McKinley.
They don't take your photo from the other side of the street, of you in the window, do they? And
no, but you could have somebody on the grassy knoll, standing on the grassy knoll and taking your photo. That's how close it is.
That just seems bizarre, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little wild, and you're walking through, and you're like, and you don't even realize it, and you're walking through, and you're like, oh shit, this is exactly where he stood. It's pretty crazy. But yes, A plus museum. Alcatraz closes because of the expensive maintenance. I mean, no surprise there. It's literally a prison on a rock in the middle of the San Francisco Bay.
Our very own Australia. Yeah. Except not as big.
Also, if you get a chance to go to Alcatraz, it's also very cool. I'm just talking about all the museums and things that you should go see. The United States Postal Service launches the zip code system. I love a zip code. And I love that you sort of know where a zip code is from. The zeros are just generally New York and New Jersey, and obviously DMV is in the 2s, and I live in Oklahoma, and that's the 7s, and so it goes to the 9s, 90210. Obviously, probably the most famous zip code that people know.
Oklahoma's in the 7s.
Yeah, my zip code 74120. Yeah.
Wow, that just goes to show how packed the East Coast is with people compared to me.
Well, yeah, because then you go to Wyoming and Idaho, and it's less towns, and then you get to all the 9s on the
my folks grew up in Idaho, and they're in the 8s.
Yeah,
and so I just figured it was maybe a little bit more genuinely dispersed across the country, but I guess
no.
So this was the fact that kind of blew my mind, and then what you just said, because I kind of have always assumed that zip codes existed because I've always grown up with a zip code. I never really stopped to think that why isn't Washington D.C. the ones? It is our capital city. We created it after Washington was fully formed. But that shows you how important New York is.
Yes,
they came before Washington.
Starts at the top in Maine and comes down and then across to California.
I mean, geographically, I feel like it makes sense to start in a corner. I mean, we do read
True.
Right? So why isn't Alaska in the 1s and Hawaii? And why aren't we?
I mean, yes,
could have been, Miami.
Yeah, Miami's only in the 3s because I have that's where my aunt lives. So yeah. But yes, I love a zip code. I love an area code. I have a lot of those weird things memorized. I also have airport codes memorized. I'm very weird. I'm showing all of my nerd weirdness in this episode. The Sabin oral polio vaccine is given nationwide in the U.S. and UK. So
yeah, and Lyndon B. Johnson thought we should all drink bleach instead. Oh, kidding. Sorry.
Don't smear LBJ.
No, I'm just saying this is how stupid we've gotten. We've actually.
Yeah.
So, fun fact about that too is that you take that polio vaccine with a cube of sugar.
Yes.
Which, if you think about Mary Poppins, which came out later,
spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
It's all kind of propaganda to make sure that people are actually taking the polio vaccine.
You know what? I'm for it.
Yeah, why not?
Propaganda in a good way
is totally okay in my book. I'm just going
every time I got a COVID vaccine, I would take myself for a milkshake. It was my my little like treat afterwards. I did the every single booster, and the one that I'm hopefully gonna get in a few weeks. Yeah, I get a milkshake afterwards. So yeah, same thing. All right, top of the pops. A song that you might think was entitled Yakety Yak is actually entitled Yakety Sax. Don't talk back. By Boots Randolph, which is wow, that's a name. That is a name with a capital
I
N.
thought it was Yakety Yak. I looked at this outline and I'm like, I've never heard that song.
Yeah,
But it
but
might
you have.
be for a really killer saxophone. Apparently.
Yes. Don't talk back. Biggest movie of the year is the movie that we are just about to talk about, Cleopatra, $26 million. And then the Best Picture Oscar to yet another epic, which I have actually not seen, I think probably since high school, and I might need to revisit it. Lawrence of Arabia, British Beatlemania. To quote,
And I'm
"We
just
can
going
start
to
the fire."
because Matt and Allie like to make me crazy with this. Cleopatra actually lost the Oscar to My Fair Lady, which was in 1964, because the 1964 Oscars cover the 1963. Matt and Allie love to just like disturb my OCD by bringing up the Oscars from the year before. But that's
Yes, well, yes, this is just the Oscar for the year that we're talking about, which is 63, which is Lawrence of Arabia. That's a good movie. I mean, I love an epic. I know we're going to talk about a true epic, but you know.
But it does kind of show like why maybe people thought a movie like Cleopatra would be really successful, because look what just won the Oscar. But
right.
But this was this took longer to make than Lawrence of Arabia. This was like in the works,
yes, it
like
did.
for a long, long fucking time. And Matt, I'm sure, is going to get into it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into it. We promise that our episode is not going to be 4 hours, though.
Welcome to the Rewind Project, where Allie, Matt, and Eric take another look at your favorite milestone movies through the lens of our present day. Will it be a skip, rent, or buy? Stay tuned and find out.
Well, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about the documentary Cleopatra. So strap in.
They took Cleopatra's mummified body and they like put it up. It's like Weekend at Bernie's. They like put her up.
Richard Attenborough does all the voiceover.
Weekend at Cleo's.
Could you imagine?
So it's a 1963 film, screenplay by Joseph L. Mankiewicz. I think I got that right.
That's right. That's right.
Randall McDougall and
Ronald McDonald.
Not
No, Ronald McDonald. I feel like they maybe had a hand in this. I don't know.
I could go for some fries now.
Thanks. Yeah,
right. And Sidney Buckman. It was directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz.
Okay, and I'm just going to stop right there and say, Joseph L. Mankiewicz is responsible for one of my favorite films of all time, which is 1950's All About Eve. One of the reasons why it's so good is that it is so succinct. So when I saw his name at the top of this thing, as I prepared to dig in for a 4-hour movie, I was shocked.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of material to get through when talking about Cleopatra.
In the 13 years between All About Eve and Cleopatra, this man got verbose.
I think he did a couple of other epics too. Let's dig in. So this movie does have some notable achievements. 1964 Academy Awards. It was nominated for 5 Oscars. So Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role for Rex Harrison, Best Sound, Best Filming Editing, and Best Music Score. Substantially Original. I feel like they keep
Substantially Original is my memoir title. I've never heard that differentiating category. I'm substantially original, but I do take a lot from other people.
I only borrow from the best.
It also won 4 Oscars. So Best Cinematography, Color.
Agree.
Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Color.
Fine.
Sure.
Best Costume Design, Color.
Yes.
And then Best Effects, Special Visual Effects, which...
What, the fire? Like the brimstone? Like what are we... Special effects for what? Like the sailing on the sea?
I think it might have been like where she's watching Caesar die, and like as she's like having that fire vision quest, where she actually, I mean, even though she's not there, she can see it happen, kind of thing.
I feel like even in 1963, that would have been cheesy. Like obviously, it's cheesy in 2023, but I don't know.
I think maybe the burning of Alexandria too. They probably didn't set an entire city on fire. You know,
Well, who knows with this movie?
I mean,
I hope not.
they spent the money for it. They absolutely.
They were like, "Fuck this city," whatever it was.
Right. I actually saw something. There was a little thing that I was watching about the making of this movie, and all of those huge marble buildings were totally made out of like cheap plaster.
Yeah, like paper mache.
Them, these columns were like paper thin, and just and so maybe there was a lot to be said. I don't know if set design kind of gets into visual effects, but like how to make paper mache look like a huge Egyptian city. I mean,
that was number 2, best art direction, set decoration.
Okay, then the best effects is bullshit. I retract.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
I mean, this is pre-Spielberg, so I mean,
competition must have been pretty slim.
Yeah.
It was also nominated for 4 Golden Globes: Best Motion Picture Drama, Best Director, Best Actor Drama, Rex Harrison, and Best Supporting Actor, I'm assuming drama, Roddy McDowall.
So interesting.
Didn't have musical or comedy or drama designations in the Golden Globes. They just do a supporting actor for all movies.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's so weird.
Mm-hmm. Supporting actor.
Why would you do it for?
That's because otherwise you'd be there all night. I mean,
and you kind of are. Interesting thing is that, I mean, you are. Like, it's like 4 hours long. It's much like this movie. The Golden Globes is like 4 hours long. Interesting thing about Roddy McDowall that I read in my research is that they mistakenly submitted him for a leading actor for the Academy Awards, and by the time they figured it out, it was too late to submit for him for supporting actor. So they put an ad in Variety, I think it was, like a full page ad that was like basically like, "We're really sorry, Roddy McDowall, you're amazing, like, our bad."
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm kind of surprised, actually, looking at this, that Rex Harrison was nominated for lead. Not that he doesn't have a huge amount of screen time, but he's in less than half the movie. Just because it's 4 hours long. So by the time the movie is over, you haven't seen Rex Harrison for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, minute. Yeah. Also, I didn't think Roddy McDowall. I mean, we're gonna get into it. I didn't think Roddy McDowall was that great anyway. But
I mean, I thought he was good. I wouldn't if he'd been nominated. I wouldn't have had a problem with that.
Yeah, I guess it's all right.
A win would have been.
Yeah.
And lastly, it was nominated for Best Original Score for a Motion Picture at the Grammys.
Okay.
Oh, so it's like almost an EGOT.
Almost. If they'd done a stage production.
A stage production and then like a TV version. Cleopatra could have had an EGOT.
So the plot: a supercilious inbred girl uses her limited natural female talents to manipulate father figures in a narcissistic attempt to rule the world by their side.
Well done, man. Well done.
I mean, I always love your log lines, but yikes. Maybe I feel a little bit more kinship to Cleopatra than what it says on here.
So, we're going to get into this, but this is one of these things that what I hear about this movie all the time is that it's actually fairly historically accurate, and I was like, is it? It is, in that everything you see in the movie is pretty much real, but it's not with everything they left out. And one of the big things they left out is that her brother, the wimpy little Ptolemy that she's trying to overthrow, is her brother, but also her husband.
Yeah.
Because the Ptolemies always married off brothers and sisters and had them rule collectively. This is a family tree that didn't work.
How Targaryen of them.
Very Targaryen of them. Yeah. In fact, the Targaryens were pretty much inspired, and George R. R. Martin said this, by monarchies like this who continually, they don't want to just have a boy to succeed. They want to have a boy and a girl and put them both on the throne. And when Ptolemy was killed because Caesar sent him off to die, and it was like, woohoo. And everyone's like, oh, well, you could marry Mark Antony, except that he's married. She was also married to another brother. I mean,
they definitely don't want an incest plot.
Yeah, but I mean, when they mention incest, they say this incestuous family that you belong to, but they never really mention that she's married to 2 of her brothers. And I don't know. It's just interesting what they couldn't do, even in the 60s. They just couldn't. That's
That's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people that would have made her, even though it's historically accurate, just unsympathetic. You know what I mean? That just even more so. So
Well, I mean, the fact that she had no interest in either of her brothers, I guess, is a point in her favor in terms of modern times. She would much rather be getting it on with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and who wouldn't? I mean, really,
Well, I mean, we're gonna get into that.
the hotness correspondent has some thoughts.
I do. I have some real thoughts, and I really and a trick. I feel like the costumers are playing on us, but we'll get into that in a second.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, let's start talking about it. So let's start off with Elizabeth Taylor as the titular character, Cleopatra.
Never has the word titular been used more clearly.
I mean, look, as somebody who also possesses large breasts, I was like, these costumes were fucking. I mean, she's so gorgeous. I could not take my eyes off her. I assume that was the case for the actual Cleopatra. I was obsessed with her. I was obsessed with everything she wore. I was obsessed with every headpiece. I mean, just amazing.
Well, the scoop that I've heard about the real Cleopatra is that, all the historians are like, actually, she wasn't considered to be that beautiful. She was, however, very witty and very smart, and she still knew how to charm people. She was incredibly charming. But, it's the movies, and Elizabeth Taylor was considered to be the most gorgeous of the gorgeous, so let's just put her in there, which is fun. It's escapism. I'm for it.
I'm just gonna say something controversial.
Boy.
I thought she was pretty, like next door girl pretty. I did not think she was drop dead gorgeous. Costuming was great, but I didn't find anything exotic about her, and I kind of expect Cleopatra to be mildly exotic. And so I don't know. Her performance in the film, I feel it went through either over the top, like over dramatic, to just kind of not even subtle. There was for me, very little there. Her best performance was when she and Julius Caesar kiss right before he goes off to the battle. And she's like, "You won't like me this way." And that moment for me was like one of her best moments on screen in the entire film. And I actually watched the movie like twice. So I don't know. I did not get a whole lot from her. Now, after reading some of the histories, I feel like I had the wrong point of view, and maybe she was played much more subtly than I was expecting, and that was the thing. But I don't know. I didn't get the sultriness. I didn't get the sexiness in this film at all.
My take on Elizabeth Taylor is that she is absolutely, like, you look at A Place in the Sun, right? 1951. Her and Montgomery Clift, she is stunning. I mean, she is a gorgeous, gorgeous woman.
Yeah.
To me, her voice is about the least sexy voice I've ever heard from an actress in my life. It doesn't have that Cate Blanchett kind of silky, rich kind of tone and so when she tries to be all sexy, it's a little nasally, and it's a little like, and realize this is like, a very gay thing for me to say, but that also tracks. It's just, there has to be more than just like the hot body to make me look at a woman and go, ooh, yeah, she's really sexy. And her voice does not do it for me. And I just kind of wonder if a vocal coach to get her timbre, down a few notes might have given her a little bit more of that oomph that you're expecting from Cleopatra. But that it didn't do it for me either.
I was transfixed the whole movie. I don't know. I as a campy fellow scenery chewer / diva, maybe I felt like that kinship with her, but I don't know. Like she wasn't. It wasn't like it wasn't a groundbreaking performance, but I mean, she's in basically every fucking scene, and so
Well, once she arrives in the rug, which took a while, actually, I was like, where's Cleopatra?
And then, of course, I was like, where's Cleopatra? And then I was like, where the fuck is Mark Antony? Like, he doesn't show up until a good hour into the movie.
Until the second half. That was clear.
Yeah. Well, since we were talking about her absence from the beginning of the film, let's talk about the first character that we meet of importance. Rex Harrison as Julius Caesar.
I love Rex Harrison.
I do too.
I really
do
do.
too.
Honestly, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe he like wins out a little bit over Richard Burton's Mark Anthony. Like, if I had to choose, I don't know.
I would totally
There's something about
choose Daddy Rex.
Daddy Rex Harrison, like, for me.
In terms of sex appeal, no. But in terms of who do I want to watch on screen, maybe it was Rex Harrison over Richard Burton, but I kind of think it was the character. We'll get into what I think about Mark Antony in just a moment. But Julius Caesar was an interesting person. And for me, it was kind of this thing where he comes from Rome, where they all believe in democracy and things being decided by a Senate. But the thing is, he wants to be the king. He really does. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he meets this woman who seduces him, and, you know, they have this huge affair, and she bears him a child, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And she's really like, you ought to be the king. You deserve it. You're that guy. You're so cool. And just pumps up his ego to the point where he really just kind of thinks that not only does she see him this way, but everyone sees him this way. And it's like, the Roman Senate is not interested, dude, in you being, you know, the king of Rome. So Ides of March, here we come, stabby, stabby. And that's kind of the end of him. But that was an interesting characterization. It was an interesting story. I was kind of into it. And when that ended, the rest of the movie, plot-wise, just felt like a real slog to me. I was real sad when Julius Caesar totally deserved his fate. Like, I believe in democracy. Let's not get it twisted. But I was sad to see him go from the movie because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Without him there, it just kind of turned into this tedious love affair that was just
tedious. Like, not even just like actual tedium, but I just felt like the two of them together, I don't know.
They deserved each other.
It's just.
So are we on to Richard Burton now? Or
I just want to say there was something about him, like the nobility that he brought to that role.
Yes.
I think I would have let him be emperor, honestly. If I was in the presence of Julius Caesar like that, I'd be like, yeah, this makes sense.
He's so good. Like, he conquered all those lands, and like, I don't know. There was something definitely about Caesar. What do we know if Caesar had epilepsy?
Yes.
He did?
Yes.
I didn't know that. I thought that was an
interesting
addition.
And again, everything I've read about this movie, the stuff that was in there was absolutely true.
Huh.
Like, her spying on him through a window, apparently that happened. Mark Antony ditching his whole navy because his girlfriend was walking away, that happened. Mm-hmm. All the crazy shit you saw totally happened. But the fact that she was in 2 incestuous marriages, and that she, by the way, just took a little bit of time out to have her half-sister assassinated halfway through her life, also missing from this film. Again, 4 hours long, you can only include so much, but things that could have spiced up, some of the slower moments were also removed because, Hollywood.
Well, and it was interesting, so they left out the part, yes, there was a civil war between he and Pompey. Julius Caesar actually started the Civil War, but like if we leave that part out, it seems more noble that he's fighting and won this Civil War. We just kind of glance.
And feels really bad about having to kill all of his own people in a war that he started. Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah. Like all of a sudden he has a conscience. Like, I got to show some remorse.
So again, historically accurate if you just think about the parts that they added and neglect, and not the ones.
Yeah, a lot of lying by omission in this movie in terms of historical accuracy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not watching this movie to write my dissertation or anything, but
I was shocked that it was as accurate as it was, which is one of the reasons why it's 4 hours long. Like, I think in any other movie maker would have said, you know what? It's a movie. Let's trim this up a little bit and make it a little bit more exciting and just smush some of these characters together, smush some of these events together, and just make it, a 3-hour roller coaster ride instead of a 4-hour dissertation on how to wear snake headdresses and, glittery eyeshadow. So 60s. Oh my God, the glittery eyeshadow.
Well, the glittery and the fact that it was blue for sure. And, some of those Roman hairstyles, I was like, those look a little 60s-esque.
Yeah, very much a 60s aesthetic.
Pretty sure they didn't wear that bouffant in ancient Rome. Just guessing. Just guessing. Just like up to here. It's like Marge Simpson.
hats were fabulous.
The costumes were amazing.
That I loved it.
Yeah.
Richard Burton as Mark Antony.
So I know this is not true. I swear to God, though, that every scene that he was in, his tunic got a little shorter every scene. And so, like, by the end, I felt like it was, like, grazing his pelvic bones. I know that's not true. I know it was probably the same size. But, like, for me in my head, I'm like, is this a joke that they're playing on us? That it just gets a little shorter and a little shorter? You see a little bit more of his thighs.
Who wears short shorts?
I mean, definitely Mark Antony wore short shorts.
Listen, the best thing I can say about Richard Burton in this whole movie is his thighs. I mean, I'm not saying that he's a bad actor. I'm not saying he did a bad job. I hated this character.
He's so whiny.
So whiny and so, I mean, and
drunk.
I get,
which is apparently very true.
You can put love on par with a career. For men, that's still kind of weird even today. And I'm, look, I'm for it. Like, love who you love. It's all good. As the child of a military person, the scene where he literally ditches his whole Navy because his girlfriend is walking away, sailing away, but whatever. I was just like, oh no, that is not what a general in command of an army. It's like, what, my girlfriend's leaving? Bye, see ya, peace out, good luck. What? At that moment, I was just like, and then he's just like, drunk. He's got whiskey dick the whole time. He's
which they had like multiple kids, so apparently he must have sobered up enough.
Yes, her children with Mark Antony was something else they left out of this movie.
Yeah, multiple kids. Richard Burton's voice for me is so iconic that because I used to listen to Camelot religiously. Like, I love that show, that Lerner and Lowe show. So his voice is so iconic for me that, like, I kind of gave him a little bit of a pass because I just like listening to his voice when he was talking on screen, but the character sucked.
Oh, the character was awful. I mean, I feel like, this is exactly, I think, what the two of you felt watching, the gorgeous, manly Robert Redford in The Way We Were.
Oh, good comparison.
I mean, just what an awful person. It's like, yeah, he's sexy, but that wears real thin after a while. Because
sure does.
What an incredible asshole.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, is that obviously you can't watch this movie and not think about the whole scandalo, which we'll talk about. But I didn't feel like they had like that much heat. I mean, people on the set, were like, "Oh my God!" It's like the second they like looked at each other, like it was like electric sparks. But that's all I could think about when I was watching this, and I just didn't feel like it was like that great chemistry. I think she had more chemistry with Rex Harrison, personally.
I was so surprised when she got angry that he got married, because it didn't make any sense because I didn't see the love affair blossoming between them, and all of a sudden she loses her shit. And I was
which was a very funny, like that whole where she was like making a meal and shit.
I never need to see a scene with a jealous woman destroying her own room in a jealous fit ever. That is the stupidest. Oh my God, you are the fucking queen of Egypt. Like, put on your big queen pants and deal.
Go have him executed. Have his head chopped off. You don't need to destroy your stuff.
Throw him in the sea, whatever. Put him in the, send him down the River Nile. Like.
Oh God, that was.
Or just take Mark Landau off to the side. Is what I'm saying.
Wow.
We will get to that because that was shocking.
Well, yeah, because I only know him as like a super old man, so it's like, what?
Before we get to him, talk about Roddy McDowall as Octavian, so Julius Caesar's nephew. He's up first here. I liked his performance. He was the Weasley leader that actually knows what he's doing politically, and I thought he did it really well. He's also from Camelot, and I recognized his voice instantly. And I couldn't remember where I recognized it from. Like, that's just like, where is this? And then I dawned on me when I started thinking about Richard Burton that, yes, he's also from that.
Roddy McDowall. Roddy.
Yeah.
Roddy McDowall.
Yeah, I thought his performance was really great. I mean, I compared it a little bit to, because we had seen, Ptolemy, Cleopatra's brother from the very beginning, who was just a whiny little bitch that was meant to be absolutely annoying. And,
immensely kind of
great
unfit,
performance in terms of someone that you automatically want to hate. And then Roddy McDowall shows up and I'm like, oh, he's the same, but he's not, because he was smarter. And to me, that was interesting, is that he's just as, like, he's not the brute. He's not the, Mark Antony is no, shining example of valor either, as we just discussed. But Octavian doesn't even try. Like, he's not a warrior. He's not a military guy, but he is a politician and he knows how to get shit done. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like if you're going to be the nephew of Julius Caesar, hopefully you've learned some lessons on, how to kind of get your way in the Roman Senate, you would hope.
But he couldn't do it the way Julius Caesar did. Julius Caesar did a lot of it on the battlefield, and that was not Octavian's jam. But he was really interesting.
I did love when Mark Antony was the one that whatever battle, and he was like, no, you need to go this way, and speaks to Octavian. He was like, ugh, he depresses me. I did like that very much, because we all know that person that, like, you have to talk to, or you have to give a phone call to, and you're like, ugh, God, they're so depressing.
Well, I just love the fact that Roddy McDowall in real life was Elizabeth Taylor's gay BFF. And
was he really?
Yes, and I
love that.
That's the backstage shit that I would have liked to have seen, is Liz and Roddy sitting there, throwing shade at everybody. I mean, that would have been, to me, like a much, that needs to be included, Matt, in your 10-episode streaming prestige series on the making of Cleopatra. We got to have some great scenes between Liz and Roddy.
I mean, they must have had a ball on this movie.
Oh,
and
God.
Can you imagine? She was like, I don't know, I kissed Richard Burton, and like I'm married, and like all of that tea, like behind the scenes. She confessed to him.
Yes.
And he was like, girl, what are you doing?
Like, give me the measurements. I need to know.
How do those thighs feel in real life?
Exactly.
I'm telling you, HBO needs to, or somebody. The making of this movie is so fucking bonkers.
Bananas.
Next up, our Martin Landau, the strangely and surprisingly sexy Rufio.
And now a word from our hotness correspondent, Allie Jenkins. Allie?
I mean, I'm just so used to Martin Landau as like an old guy, so it was definitely. I agree. I was a little, and at first I was like, wait. Martin Landau, and then I'm like, oh fuck, that 6 years ago. Yeah, I agree. I'm with you.
Definitely needs to contact IMDb and have them change his cover photo to be.
What is his cover photo? I should look that up. It's probably when he's looking really old.
Yeah, it is.
I'm looking it up right now.
I'd ask them.
Brilliant as Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood. Like, don't get me wrong, but and he's kind of. Like, I hate to use this word because I feel like it's, but it's.
Oh God, it's so bad. He's like 95 years old in this photo.
But that's why people know him now. So
right.
I think we should petition, because they should also know him as Rufio. So.
And he wasn't like, he's not classically beautiful, but there's just something about him that's just like, oof. I mean, he got my motor running in a way that Richard Burton just did not, to be quite honest with you.
And I really enjoyed his performance as the support to both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. I mean, he was definitely a general and knew that he was serving Rome, and so he served them in the interest of serving Rome.
As best he could, even when one of them was being a complete dickhead.
Yes.
Looking at you, Mark Antony.
Looking at you. You can't just go down to her barge. I mean, she's already floated Egypt here. You can't just go down to her barge. You have to be that much of an egotistical dick.
I did love that scene on her boat, though, where she, basically gets him drunk and,
Totally
manipulated him. Totally.
Yeah. Loved it.
Oh, to me, her best line in the whole movie, Matt, talking about Liz Taylor and her lines was, how he says, he loves Greek things. And she's like, well, as an almost all Greek thing, I'm flattered.
I laughed several times in this movie. Like, there were definitely times where I was like, where I was definitely chuckling along. There were some good arch lines in this movie.
Couple of other people, Caesar Donova as Apollodorus.
Who is Cleopatra's right-hand person.
Yes, brought in the rug. I gotta say, I was
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed him throughout, and towards the end too, where he can't kill Mark Antony, that whole scene, I'm glad he actually got a moment as not just the servant to Cleopatra, but that was actually a really interesting scene for me. I thought he did really well in that.
And I liked his last scene with Liz when he was basically saying, don't do this. And she was like, yeah, I'm still the queen. Like, do what I say. And he's like, all right, yeah.
That was the Egyptian gay BFF.
Yeah.
Girl, you are okay.
No. Okay. What, honey? What?
Hume Cronin as Sosagenes.
I gotta rewatch Cocoon because I feel like those people are like my age now, probably. But I will always know him from Cocoon and from Batteries Not Included. Also a great movie.
I always forget about that movie. I love that movie.
Yeah,
it's a great film. I actually really liked him though as her forgotten educator and aide. Who gets it? Man, that sucked. Octavian with the spear.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
Oh my God, it was a great scene. It was like, it actually was one of the few times where I actually like my eyebrows raised up above my glasses, but what? That just happened. Okay. I mean, shitty end, but what a great scene.
Yes. Although I kind of doubt Octavian could have actually done that. I don't think he's much of a javelin thrower, in my opinion, but it was a great scene. And then I'll ask an honorable mention as I was going through the cast. Carol O'Connor as Casca. He's one of the Roman Senate.
I totally missed Archie Bunker in this movie.
Yeah, I only knew it because I saw your outline and I was like, wait, what?
I was like, oh, wait a minute, no. But yeah, Carol O'Connor is actually in this movie.
I mean, good for him.
So we kind of already started talking about it. This is a historical drama. I mean, it could have been.
There were a lot of horses. Around, there were horses. Historical. I like that.
Historical drama. Okay.
Freudian slip there.
Not slut shaming on this show.
No. Cleopatra did what she had to do as a woman ruler.
I mean, and she got some shit done too. She really did.
That's what I'm saying.
Watching the movie though, I do love a historical drama. I'd actually just like period pieces, and they kind of go hand in hand. So I do love movies. Like I'm totally looking forward to the Napoleon movie that's coming out this November. I think it looks amazing.
There's a Napoleon movie coming out?
Oh yeah,
yes.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh yes, he's a good Napoleon. He's a good choice for Napoleon.
Yeah,
he can have that like whiny, bratty kind of like I'm short energy, short king energy.
Okay, just Napoleon was actually not that short. This is another example of the winner's right to history.
Piggy. All I can think about is Napoleon and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Little known fact, he's actually an Oompa Loompa, but it's...
Get ready for the letters. You want to address those to Matthew?
So watching the movie, though, I found it odd, and I kind of know why as I read some of the history, that we're getting Cleopatra's story through the two men in her life.
Shocker.
I mean,
trash men in every city, every era, whatever. But yes, I mean, I don't know. There was rude things.
Yes, and I think that you can't really, the way that her history played out, it really was, Egypt was a lesser power compared to the Roman Empire.
Sure.
And how she managed these men really was a lot to do with her survival and what was best for the Egyptian people. I do think it would have been more interesting, not to get rid of the men, but just kind of show like her having a child with Julius Caesar was as much a political choice as anything else.
Oh, for sure.
The idea of her, a scene between her and Apollodorus is just like, where she kind of reveals a little bit of her plan. So we see her as kind of a strategic thinker and not just, someone who gets carried away by her overactive vagina would have been a nice characterization, because I think that would have been a lot more true and a lot less insulting.
I think you have a great point there, because, especially Julius Caesar, we get to listen to him pontificate and tell you why he's doing things. We never get that from Cleopatra, and we just kind of have to assume that she's making these smart political moves. but you don't really ever get it kind of told to you why she's doing these things. And she could have done it to her, her gal pal Polydorus, and that would have been great. But we never get that. So it kind of feels like she is a supporting character in her own movie
Yes.
at times.
I would agree with that.
So, and to the point, so this movie, when it landed in I'm gonna get his name wrong without looking at it, Mankiewicz's hands, he originally envisioned it as 2 films, and even those 2 films were gonna be Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, and then Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
Yes, and the boys get their
names
names first.
Yes.
In both versions. Yeah. I mean, and that's like, Shakespeare wrote Antony and Cleopatra, and then George Bernard Shaw wrote Caesar and Cleopatra. They are both fabulous stories with complete arcs, and putting them both together, that's another reason why this feels like super sprawling. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor didn't really have one story to tell throughout this entire thing. And I think that a good screenwriter probably could have given her, if you want to tell her whole life, which me, I'm always a fan of, like, tell the story of a pivotal weekend, and that's a much better biopic than trying to tell somebody's story from birth to death in one movie. It never works for me. But I mean, you're right, Matt. It's all about, the men are really the driving forces in this, and she's kind of an object in their story, and yet it's called Cleopatra. But I think that's also just, we've done her a disservice throughout history. It's always that she is driven by her passions. And it's like, you know what? She survived, and she really helped Egypt to thrive when Egypt under a lesser ruler just would have been swallowed up by the empire.
Yeah.
She made some real choices, and it would be interesting. And we'll see whether or not Gal Gadot's movie, if it even gets off the ground, does a better job with that. I'm assuming it will in 2023, but we'll see.
I hope so, because like Cleopatra really only got 2 moments of like showing her greatness as a political leader. And I think the first one was where Julius Caesar came to meet her at her bath, and she decided to just go through with the all the talk that what her bath was really like. So they set it up not as it really was, but as what the rumors had been, to propagate the story even more. And I think, in a sense, to make people not think that she was a political leader, like, so she could kind of hide in the shadows.
She's a silly woman taking her bath, like,
so they don't take her seriously, and she can help manipulate. And then the other scene is that fucking amazing Vegas show that she puts on when she comes into Rome. I mean, that was
Cleopatra walked so Coming to America could run. Like, that's all I could think about.
Oh,
I just needed Gene Kelly tap dancing in the middle of the whole thing.
I mean, I love that. That was the best, like, just a spectacle after spectacle after spectacle. And then she comes in on that, like, Sphinx with her golden-haired son,
and doesn't even walk down the steps. All of a sudden, the thing, it turns into
a palanquin. Yes.
Yeah.
Which that's how I need to be carried around at all times, is on a palanquin, I think.
And then the final scene where that she knows what she's done, and she just gives Caesar a wink. And she knows that she's won the crowd, and she knows that he knows that he's won the crowd. And she's like, this is what I bring to you.
So good.
Yeah. Another great moment. But like one of the few that Cleopatra gets as a ruler as Cleopatra, in my opinion.
No lies.
So the movie itself
is actually kind of way more interesting, right? The making of.
Yes. I was not expecting this when I started like doing some diving into this. The history of this movie is fucking bonkers.
I mean, like, the Wikipedia entry was, like 5 pages long just about the making of the movie.
Like, when we were talking earlier, like, no lies, I would seriously watch a miniseries on the making of this, because you could do several seasons. There's enough shit that goes on inside the making of this that I think people would watch. I mean, just to the beginning, that this was the passion project of a producer, Walter Wenger. Unfortunate last name. Sorry, Walter. that had been several years beforehand
They
convicted of
called him
murder.
Wangman.
Wang-
Wangman. Probably not.
I mean,
Maybe.
maybe Elizabeth Taylor did. I don't know. I think she probably had that kind of body sense of humor. Convicted of murder of his wife's lover. Okay, goes to jail for only 4 months. By the way, even though he's convicted, he pleaded insanity. Goes to jail, which the jail is actually still in operation. It's been renamed. It was the Castic Honor Farm in northern LA, which was actually an operational farm, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, we won't get into the history of like the penal system, but you know, Angola was too, and like all of the chain gang places like they produced.
Not only our hotness correspondent, but our historical correspondent. I love you, Alex.
I'm multifaceted.
So he gets out and then has a comeback, does Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then I Want to Live with Susan Hayward, who she wins a Best Actress award for that. And then starts pumping this movie around, gets to Fox, and there, because Fox has had such a shitty year with so many bad stinkers.
LOL. Fox, you're gonna go almost bankrupt in a few years.
Well, yeah, and this movie almost bankrupted them too. The history is insane. So having the first director where they're working on this movie for like 3 years, and then they have 10 minutes of usable footage by the time they're done.
That's wild.
And they have to stop and redo the script again. They went through like 5 different script writers.
And didn't they recast everyone but Liz when they halted and brought it back?
They did. So the reason they ended up halting is because Liz actually got sick, because Wanger told them not to film in England because of the weather, that she would get sick. He told them that. She ended up getting sick. It turned into meningitis, and she was hospitalized for meningitis, and it shut down the production for weeks.
But she got a pity Oscar, so hey, not everything was lost.
During that time, they went through another rewrite, and I think that's when they did all the recasting. Originally, he had wanted Rex Harrison and Richard Burton, and Fox said no, so they cast other people. Elizabeth Taylor saw Richard Burton in Camelot, and he got cast. And I think that's how Roddy McDowall actually got cast as Octavian as well, because she saw Camelot. So it fucking bonkers. And then
we're not even into any of the stuff that actually made it to the screen that we have.
No, because that was all under the first director who resigned. And then Mankiewicz was hired, and down to the point where Elizabeth Taylor actually was hired for a $1 million salary, plus she got a cut of the profits. This was unheard of at the time. That would have been like $10 million today.
Love to see it. Love to see Liz Taylor.
And she actually, what I read is she didn't want to do it. So she floated this $1 million price tag, knowing that they would never agree to it. When they said done, she was like, well, can't turn that down. Let's.
Because what's that? $10 million now, or $20 million now?
Yeah, $10 million now.
Yeah.
Plus a cut of the profits.
I mean,
that's insane.
Yeah.
She also got them to film it in Tato Vision, which is a proprietary vision created by her at the time husband. Okay, so we had Cinerama, which was 3 cameras that had to be synced. Tato Vision did the same thing with 1 camera, and it's actually what Panavision became. So, but because it was filmed in Tato Vision, she actually got a cut of royalties because of that as well.
Because the husband who died and left her everything.
Love a boss bitch.
Yes, she is a boss bitch. She was Cleopatra. So yeah, that's why I want somebody to make the making of, because this is bonkers crazy.
Oh, and then we haven't gotten into the horrid affair between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton that everyone thought was going to destroy their careers, both of them, because of course Elizabeth Taylor was now, Mike Todd had died. Now she was married to Eddie Fisher, who was Debbie Reynolds' husband. So she had that whole happy home. And now they're married. Richard Burton has a wife of 10 years that he divorces to be with Liz Taylor, and everyone's like, their careers are over. And in fact, the 60s were just happening, and people, for whatever reason, didn't turn away from Liz the way that they turned away from Ingrid Bergman when she did the same thing not long before. But they were just like, couldn't get enough. Every tabloid that put Liz and Dick on the cover, they were buying it. And when this movie came out, they were like, I need to see this shit. This is going to be hot. And welcome to the 60s, people. It was like, different world.
Yeah. I guess probably is what has gotten us used to the idea of stars just kind of divorcing and remarrying every couple of years. And like these, like it's actually today, I think, more surprising to the public when stars stay together for long tenures. Like,
yeah, we all
look at Goldie Hawn and
filing for divorce, and we all went, okay.
Yeah.
There's been a lot. There's been a hot girl divorce summer for sure. There's been a lot of divorces this summer. Like, a lot of celebrity divorces. We won't get into them, but yeah, I mean, there's been 10 this summer. It's been nuts. So.
But I think it's also, I'm on the one hand, I think the life is hard to have relationships take work, and the life of showbiz, whether you're on tour or you're off, with these 12-hour days on sets and whatever, trying to raise kids together, trying to have a life together, that's tough. And these big famous people also, a lot of them have big old egos, and that also makes relationships just really hard. So yeah, we are to the point now where, we're not shocked. And in fact, Richard Burton's wife knew he was a womanizer, knew he was constantly having an affair, and she just kind of had either learned to live with it, but she wasn't going to get a divorce. Like that was not her jam. She was shocked when he said, I'm divorcing you to be with my girlfriend, because, this had happened a million times before. But, he was actually going to divorce her, which was again, scandal. And then everyone went, we love them. They're cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Allie, you had a hot take about this movie comparing it to Willy Wonka, and you briefly teased this, and my mind has been thinking about it this entire time, and I am curious, where you draw that parallel to.
Well, it would just start with seeing Ptolemy and being like, oh God, he's kind of the Veruca Salt of this whole thing. Because, if Julius Caesar is Willy Wonka and Mark Antony or Octavius is Charlie, probably Mark Antony. And, then I was like, well, then who's the Slugworth? Then I was just kind of going through and I was assigning characters by Willy Wonka. It really just started with Ptolemy being a big whiny baby at the beginning and being I was bye. When she was banished, I was see you later.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I was I would like to see this kid go through Wonka's factory and be popped off at some point by.
Yeah, but if Julius Caesar is Wonka, kind of tired, kind of looking for his successor, and I don't know. I just then I was who's the Mike TV? And I was well, it could be. And then I was well, Cleopatra's the Violet Beauregard. I don't know. I was just kind of going through it and assigning in my head. It kind of fell apart a little bit, but. I don't know. I thought it was funny. It was a fun game for the first hour of the movie.
That blows my mind and is hilarious.
Thank you. Maybe Octavian was the Slugworth. Maybe that's who it was.
Oh, perfect Slugworth. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody ready for some fun facts?
Sure.
I mean, I bet they're extra fun for this movie.
Oh my God.
This was the highest grossing movie in 1963. We said that in the cold open. It actually made $57.5 million when you put together US and Canadian grosses. It initially lost movie, though, because it cost $44 million to make, which is $421 million, which is kind of in today's money, which is kind of small comparatively to a lot of the big budget films that we've got currently. But at that time, freaked everybody out. It was the most expensive movie ever made until that point and almost bankrupted Fox.
I just think it's hilarious that the top moneymaker of the year almost bankrupted its studio.
Right?
Yes. That is just crazy.
It's a lot of extraneous costs.
Supposedly, the movie finally broke even in 1973.
Only took 10 years.
But Fox has kept a tight lid on any of the profits since to prevent paying out promised percentages.
This is why people are on fucking strike. Because
Exactly.
the studios are pulling this bullshit.
Mm-hmm. They do it, and which is obvious. Like, if they're not going to tell you, I mean, so we really need to be supporting everybody.
Yeah, solidarity.
Fuck the studios.
Yeah.
The original director, Ruben Mamelin, offered the role to the African-American actress Dorothy Dandridge.
Oh, she would have been a good Cleopatra.
And she told him, you won't have the guts to go through with it. They're going to talk you out of it.
And they probably would have. Yeah. Interesting stuff, though, about Cleopatra's race. If we pause for a moment, we're all aware of that whole Netflix scandal that happened last year. They put out a documentary about Cleopatra, and they hired some actors to actually play out some of the scenes that they were talking about, and they hired Black people to play Egyptians. And then all of these white power folks were like, Cleopatra was white, she was Greek, blah, 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 blah. And now Gal Gadot is saying, I'm going to play Cleopatra next year. And everyone's like, you're white, you can't play Cleopatra, yada, 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 yada. And I did some digging because I was like, okay, no matter who gets this role in 2023, somebody's going to complain about it. So what's going on here? And the truth is that if, in fact, Cleopatra belonged to a family tree that did not fork, made up of nothing but brothers and sisters all the way up and down the line, she probably would have been white and blonde. However, she also would have been filled with all of these diseases that come from, generations upon inbreeding. And the fact is that several of her, lineage probably started to let their genes mingle a little bit with the North Africans. And by the time Cleopatra came along, was probably, if not a Black woman, the way that we would look at a Black woman today, probably noticeably darker than most of the folks coming out of Rome. But the answer historically, if you ask a historian that's worth their salt, they will say, we don't know. We don't know what Cleopatra looked like. It's one of those things that we missed. It's not recorded. So whether it's Gal Gadot, whether it's a Black woman, it's like one of those things that, like, you know what, cast whoever you want, because we really don't know. And that's
kind of up in the air. It could have gone either way.
But I mean, most of the historians are saying she probably was not descended from, succession upon succession of brother-sister unions, because the congenital diseases would have killed them all at some point. They would have died out because that's just not sustainable. So there probably is quite a bit of North African genetic, but none of it's proven because they were in charge. So it's all kind of kept under, according to the official line was, no, we are all completely 100% descended from Ptolemy I on both sides, which is kind of impossible.
Well, it's kind of like Jesus too. Like Jesus wouldn't have necessarily been a super white guy either.
No, we pretty much know that Jesus was not the blonde, blue-eyed person
with ripped abs.
That.
Writer and director Joseph L. Mankiewicz was fired during post-production.
So messy.
Yes. Another thing that has to go into this miniseries by Fox president Daryl Zanuck for the movie's ending. They had a disagreement on how that movie was going to end, and he fired him over it. They had to rehire him, though, because nobody else knew how to stitch all the stuff that they had shot together. They couldn't edit the movie, so they had to rehire him so they could actually put the movie together. He probably did it on
purpose. He probably didn't label all the film canisters, and Zanuck was left going, what the hell? I will say, the ending is the one thing that I liked. It's like, there she is in the tomb. She's dead. The strings swell. The end. I was like, okay, at least we didn't draw this out. Because, 4 hours into it, what are you going to do?
Well, and the whole bit with Mark Anthony and everything, that's all true.
Yes.
And they have to lower him into her tomb with her and everything, and he dies there. I was just kind of, wow. I mean, this quote unquote love story, actually has a lot of there are
if
there
that
are
happened,
recorded
which
parts
it did, you got to dramatize that. A lot of the stuff midway through, we could have skipped. I mean, honestly, we could have skipped.
I mean, all the battles sort of ran together. I was like, where are they now? Who's fighting whom? I don't know.
Well, it's also, I mean, I feel like we're today used to more intense battle scenes, and battle scenes from earlier films just aren't as choreographed and as graphic as we kind
Well,
of
and
like today.
naval battles are just not that exciting. I mean, they're all bobbing up and down in the water and just kind of, I mean, what are you going to do?
Like little dinghies, just kind of.
I mean, the sword fight between Antony and who he thought was Octavian was kind of like, ooh, my blood pressure went up a little bit, and then the helmet came off, and it's not even him, and I'm like, okay, but it's Octavian.
The ramming was pretty cool too, of the boat into the other boat. I thought
that's your memoir title.
That's what she said.
The ramming was pretty cool.
Or just the ramming, and then like the subtitle, it was pretty cool.
This movie has clearly stirred our libido.
Yeah, wow.
On that note, are you guys ready for a game?
Clearly ready.
This game is titled It's Her Turn. So because Gal Gadot is doing another movie, I didn't want to do a, hey, let's cast this film and do it again kind of thing.
No, I like this idea better.
Let's pick a different female leader or a ruler from history. This, though, I am going to limit us. We're not going to have the option to do a mini-series or something like that. This is a 3-hour film, okay? Or up to 3 hours. Cast whomever you need to tell the story, and then select a director. So I generally lean towards Allie, so I'm going to pick Eric first this time.
Okay.
Who doesn't lean towards Allie?
It's true. So I didn't go very far away from Cleopatra, actually, when I made my choice. And I wanted it to be, an homage to Cleopatra. So I wanted it to be sexy, and I wanted it to be, and I kind of kept it in that swords and sandals kind of feeling. But I dipped a little bit away from history and went into mythology a tad. The Trojan War probably happened, but it probably didn't happen the way that Homer and all of the mythologists, spelled it out to be. But I'm going to do a movie about Helen of Troy, because I really think Helen of Troy, like Cleopatra, is oftentimes a side character in her own story. They always kind of focus on the boys, and yet she's at the center of this whole thing. And I was like, you know what? We should make a movie about her. So kind of not my most inspired choice in a director, but I thought, gosh, who's going to take a female icon that is kind of seen to be ditzy and stupid and actually make her seem intelligent? Maybe Greta Gerwig could do that. Maybe. So I'm going to tap Greta Gerwig to direct my story of Helen of Troy. I stacked my cast because I'm just super excited about this. Helen not only absconded with Paris and started the Trojan War, but before that even happened, her mother was apparently raped by a god in the form of a swan, and Helen was hatched from an egg. So that's how she began.
Sure.
Then she was kidnapped by Theseus, and either she seduced him or he raped her. Can't really, the mythology sometimes contradicts itself. When she came back, she was considered damaged goods, so they had to marry her off right away. So they married her off to this guy named Menelaus, who she was bored with and probably mistreated her. And then when she met the young Paris of Troy, she was like, ooh, I want me some of that. So she ran away with him. Huge scandal. And that's what started the Trojan War, was the whole thing. We have to get her back. So my Helen, because she did such a great job in this kind of epic fantasy kind of thing before, I'm going to bring Sophie Turner, who we know from Game of Thrones, Sansa Stark, to play Helen of Troy. Let her do her blonde look again. She looks good as a blonde. Lita, her mother, who again made it with a god, and that's how she created Helen to begin with, Hannah Waddingham. Absolutely. Like, you just need a badass bitch to do that, because she's kind of conniving. Theseus, the man who absconds with her first, I'm actually going to give kind of a serious role to someone who's mostly known for comedy, but just because of his look, I'm going to cast John Cena as Theseus, so that would be like her first kind of, dalliance, but she probably gets away.
That tracks. That tracks for him.
Menelaus, the trash husband she's married off to against her will, even though I love him, I'm like, who could play that, and who we would hate would be Nick Offerman. as Menelaus. And then when she gets, seduced by the young pup, I thought Zac Efron would be perfect to come get her. And, she's like, ooh, this is what I've been missing my whole life, and runs off with him. Now, when they get to Troy, the whole thing is that Paris is kind of as much of a dork as Mark Antony was, because, he was off, hanging out partying with Helen, while his older brother had to do all the fighting in the Trojan War that his brother had brought to his city. So a little bit of a nod back to Barbie again. Ryan Gosling is going to play Hector, the older brother, who has to do the majority of the warfare as a result of this whole thing. Menelaus has a brother who is also a general on the Greek side, Agamemnon, and he's going to show up. And of course, Clytemnestra is Helen's sister, who's also married to Agamemnon. And then when he comes back from the war, she kills him, which is a whole other thing. So a little cameo from Haley Stenfeld as Clytemnestra. Because this is a huge hit, we can do her movie next. So anyway, that's just like the whole, but it's it's mythology, so it's just a big soap opera from beginning to end. And yet Helen is always this side character who's just like sitting there being gorgeous, but you never really get her point of view. So I thought it would be interesting to actually center a whole movie around Helen of Troy. And I think Greta would probably, keep the focus where it ought to be. If this movie is indeed called Helen of Troy, she would make sure that Helen actually runs the show.
Wow, that is a stacked epic film. I love it. Oh my gosh. We'll get in. Mine is tiny compared to yours.
So is mine.
I'm going to cut that out too.
That's also what she said.
Oh, Allie, how did you go?
Okay, so it's shocking to no one. I went in a completely different direction. I started with my first thought when you posed this game was Joan of Arc, but I really felt like there's just not so much known about her. She died so young, and I do find her story very interesting, and it would be like another good swords epic. But I just didn't feel like the meat was there. So I was like, no, let's go to somebody who definitely has a long ass history and a lot to say. And I don't believe that there's been a movie about this person. So I went totally back to America, Susan B. Anthony. So I just feel, there's so much history there. She did so much stuff, lots of stuff that people don't even know about. Obviously, they know about the whole suffragette movement, but she did so much else for, Native Americans and, just as a presence in America. And, I just felt like she hasn't gotten her due. So Susan B. Anthony's story, Susan B. Anthony would be played by Sarah Paulson.
Oh,
love it.
I feel like she can bring that gravitas. I feel like she could play Susan B. Anthony over a variety of years, just like some good aging makeup and, that sort of thing, because she had such a long life. And then I didn't cast anybody else, but I did cast Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was, Susan's, BFF and then kind of antagonist, and they had a really interesting relationship. So Emma Stone is going to be Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Love
it.
I feel like the two of them together, I don't know if they've ever acted together. I feel like that's a good, Emma Stone's new movie that's coming out apparently is amazing. And, I can't wait to see it. And I feel like she doesn't also get her due as an actor. And then I went to direct this, obviously it's got to be a woman. And I went directly to Sofia Coppola because I love her Marie Antoinette so much that I feel like she could take this in, kind of a different direction. And she's good with those long histories. And, I like her directing style. So I think it would just be called maybe Susan B would be the title, or just a big bold letters on the screen.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's totally not what that's cool. It's a female leader.
Yes.
So it didn't have to be a ruler, it was a leader.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I, as usual, went in a completely different direction than you guys. So I did this whole kind of Wikipedia rabbit hole just to look for other female leaders and rulers and stuff, and just historically. And I ended up finding one, Boudica, queen of the Brythonic Celtic tribes. Okay.
Wow.
People of the Norfolk and Eastern Britain. And the reason I landed on this is I was trying to take Eric's point to heart that movies need to focus on a particular point in life. So, and I think that's really true. It makes it for a better film when you're talking about one piece of history for this person. And the biggest piece of history for her is that she actually led an uprising against Rome and the and Britain itself. So, because what ended up happening is her husband dies. Her husband, as the ruler of this area, had actually been an ally to Rome. In his will, they were supposed to take the area and give it to Rome, and and leave everything for his daughters. Ended up not happening, and Rome just kind of took the property. So she leads an uprising against them, and it seemed like a really cool story. So I was going to have Katie McGarth, who you probably don't know. She's an Irish actress. She's done a lot of TV stuff. Fantastic. The thing that I know her from is Supergirl. She plays Lena Luthor. Beautiful if you look her up. She is Black Irish, black hair, porcelain skin, gorgeous. But she's actually a really great actress too. There's something about her presence on screen that just kind of pulls you in, and you think she could actually be you think of her as a leader, which is why she was great for the role that she was in. I would have Oscar Isaacs be Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, who is the governor of Britain from Rome at the time. And so he's the guy that she's battling. And then I would also throw in, because Nero was actually the emperor of Rome at the time, Jake Gyllenhaal. I think would actually make an interesting, because Nero was actually young. So I think we need to have a younger person, although I don't know that Jake Gyllenhaal's really young anymore. I mean, we're all aging.
You know what? Yeah.
And the person that I would have direct this would be Gina Prince Bythewood. Did you guys see The Woman King?
I did not.
No,
But
I've heard of it though.
Great movie. It was good character building and great action scenes. It was a very well done movie. I think it should have. If you look at ratings, it's lower than I think it should be. It was a really good movie. That would be my story. So, I think
Hollywood, again, call us. What's the matter with you?
What
Seriously.
are you doing?
Next up is Skip, Rent, or Buy. So if you haven't joined us before, Skip is Give Me the Asp. I really want to avoid this film.
Give me that asp.
Rent is, let's hit the marketplace in Alexandria, for a little bit. And then Buy, I want that fucking barge, bitch. Yes. So,
Didn't love that barge.
Let's reverse this. Allie, you go first.
I have to say I'm a solid Rent. I love it epic. I couldn't help but compare this to the Ten Commandments, which y'all know I love. I'm obsessed with the Ten Commandments, and it's a very similar type of movie, same era. Also Lawrence of Arabia, which we talked about earlier. So I wasn't mad, did it have to be 4 hours? No. Did I do it in bite-sized chunks to make it easier? Yes. Do I watch 4 episodes of hour-long shows? Yes. So, I can get through a 4-hour movie. And I don't know, I was just transfixed, obviously, by Elizabeth Taylor. And, there were definitely some boring parts, but I laughed a lot more. And just the spectacle of it, I love a spectacle, shocking to no one. And so I just, solid Rent. Probably will never watch it again, but I am glad that I have it in my pantheon now.
Cool. Eric?
I will say I'm gonna get in that middle ground between Skip and Rent. I will say, as a movie fan and a lover of movie trivia and movie lore, I'm glad that I saw it, but I did not enjoy the watching of it. And so, from that standpoint, from just as somebody who likes to watch movies, it's a skip for me. Honestly, I think my time would have been better spent watching YouTubes about the making of this movie, as opposed to actually watching the movie itself, which does not speak well for the movie. So if I absolutely had to choose, I would say I'm probably a skip on this one. You can know all about it and not have to actually watch it. And Mark Antony was such a shithead. Like, that whole love story just did nothing for me. And, his beautiful thighs notwithstanding, sorry.
I am between a Rent and a Buy, actually, which is weird. I love the first half of this movie. I really do. I ended up watching it twice because I didn't end up finishing it, and then I had to go back, and so I watched it on a long plane trip and watched the whole movie. And the second half is not as good as the first.
For sure.
Yeah. just isn't. But that first half is so great. I love that movie. If you do love period pieces and you're not scared of a 4-hour film, I think this movie is really for you. I think you'll actually enjoy it. So I am a solid rent. I think most people would actually have fun with this film. And it's probably a movie to watch with friends. I think you'll probably enjoy it. So.
I think somebody should do an edit and actually make, note the wording, Cleopatra and Caesar, and then make another movie called Cleopatra and Antony. And if they marketed them as 2 separate movies that were each under 2 hours, I could probably get behind, especially the first one, and that would be great. But yeah 4 hours of Cleopatra was just a lot.
In one sitting, yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully you'll join us again. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about Vertigo.
I'm so excited. I've never seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's part of the reason why I picked it, because I've never seen it. So.
Oh, good movie. Really good movie. Well, thank you all for joining us. This has been the Rewind Project. I'm Matt.
I'm Allie.
I'm Eric.
Be kind. Rewind.
You've been listening to The Rewind Project. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Google Play. Please subscribe and rate us. It helps a lot. We love your comments and questions. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and via our new phone number at 202-618-2402. Thanks for listening. Be kind. Rewind.
I can't do a Scottish accent, but here's my wagman.
I can't do without my wanker.
I honestly don't know where to go from that. Sorry.
I'm sorry.